On today's show, the Cavs started strong, acquitted themselves well, but ultimately lost to the Boston Celtics. Let's dive into that game.
You are Locked On Cavs, your daily Cleveland Cavaliers podcast.
Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use our code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. I'm Chris Manning. The man right there adjusting his camera is the one and only Evan Dammarell. Thanks again to Jake Stevens, as always, for his work on production. We're going to talk Cavs Celtics today. Cleveland loses in Boston, the first of two matchups this week between those teams. 120-113. Mitchell led all scorers with 29. Darius Garland had 26. Max Drew 17. Jared Allen 14. Tatum and Brown had 25 apiece. Caris LeVert, in his return from injury, played just under 23 minutes, scored 11 points on 5 of 11 shooting, and was 1 of 4 from 3. Evan, what is your big Cavs Celtics takeaway?
The Cavs came out hot in the first quarter. I think it was a little jarring. I think maybe Boston had a little bit of that rust after not playing since Friday, and maybe that was evident in the first quarter a little bit, but Cleveland certainly didn't give the impression of a team that was coming off the second game of a back-to-back, a very competitive first game of that back-to-back against Orlando the night before, and they looked good. I think I was really impressed with how well Jared Allen played against Kristaps Porzingis to open the game. He handled the task and the assignment very well. You and I talked about this leading up to the game, this could be a bit of a bloodbath because of Allen fouling out against Orlando and having to deal with the stretchier big, and also just Cleveland kind of on this second game of a back-to-back. But it was encouraging, and then you started to see them kind of run out of steam down the stretch, like teams that are on the second game of a back-to-back tend to do, and the Cavs kind of let this one get away from them, I think, and I have more deeper takes, just overall in the grand scope of things. But it felt like this one was winnable for Cleveland, but it certainly got away from them.
Yeah, I think this started well enough. I think this game, obviously, they come out gangbusters. They're leading big early. They're scoring. The energy is very much in their advantage. That was all really, really positive. And I think overall, Evan, I come away thinking this is a pretty good performance. I think just considering how good Boston is and the way they play and all of that, I think them coming back and finding a way back into this game, whether they were going to win or whether they're going to lose, felt like it was probably going to happen. They deserve a ton of credit for how they did it. We're going to talk about some of the pressure points I think they hit on pretty well. They were just ultimately better. They scored at a high clip. They executed better than the Cavs did. They had answers for what the Cavs did. But I still think that this was overall a pretty good performance. For whatever it's worth, the Cavs beat the very large spread. I think it opened at it finished at 11.5 by the time the game started. It was, I think, 10.5 yesterday when we looked. All in all, this was a decent enough, good Cavs performance against one of the best teams in the league. Certainly some uneven parts of it. Certainly things I think they would like back or a chance to do better. Certainly, I think, and someone we'll talk about in segment 3, they really could have used Evan Mobley in this game, and we can talk about specifically how that happened, but I think overall, a better performance than I expected against one of the best teams in the league, and you don't get moral victories in the NBA, but this kind of feels like one.
Yeah, if you had to look at it from a glass half full, this is a moral victory for sure. I think that is important, the context of no Evan Mobley in this one certainly did play a part in this, but for me, in terms of just moral victories and maybe what to look ahead, this is a pseudo baseball style playoff matchup where the Cavs have a day off, the Celtics have a day off tomorrow, then they play each other again on Thursday before Cleveland comes back home to play Atlanta on Saturday. And I think for me, what was encouraging in this game was you saw a lot of Darius Garland and Donovan Mitchell playing off of one another, but it wasn't your turn, my turn basketball. They're playing within the flow of the offense, and they were finding ways to get others involved and also just get each other going on offense, where we didn't see that the night before against Orlando, where Garland was pressing quite a bit in that third quarter and Mitchell only took one shot. You saw the inverse of it against Boston, and I talked about this heading into the game, the matchup between Holiday and Brown versus Garland and Mitchell, that's a nightmare defensively, and I think the two of them played pretty well in this game. They had their finger on the pulse in the offense, and this is what I'm kind of talking about, where like the old eye test says like there's something off here, but like now they're saying like, oh, maybe there is a little bit of juice here that they can build off of. And now looking at the Thursday's game, there is some good things that the Cavs can clean up to maybe actually knock off the Celtics court advantage, quote unquote, just because they are still undefeated on their home court.
This is one of those games, Evan, where I think you do feel the Mitchell Garland thing working a little bit in this game. And I think Darius in particular, I tend to really think this team looks a little better at times when Darius is the one, or at least is more integral in part of what they're doing. You know, spoiler, neither. I'm going to give someone else, not one of these two guys, my MVP for this game when we get to awards in the next segment. But you could make a very good case for either of them. Garland plays 38 minutes, 11 to 23 from the field, 4 of 8 from 3, was really aggressive and looking for his 3. Something the Cavs did overall, 7 assists, 2 turnovers. That's at 26 points. That's a pretty darn good Darius Garland game. And then you have Mitchell, 29 points, 11 to 22 from the field, 5 of 13 from 3, 2 of 2 from the line, 6 rebounds, 3 assists, 3 turnovers, had a steal as well. A very aggressive, a very energetic Mitchell game, both really motivated, both playing, I think, incredibly hard for much of this game. And those two guys are going to drive the team's offense. The offense as a whole worked really well. Not quite as at the same clip as Boston's, and that's ultimately where they kind of fall short in this game over the course of 4 quarters. But a really, really good performance by those two guys, I think, to spirit everything. It's a great shout on your part. Yeah,
I think it's just encouraging. Like you said, this was overall like a very, very good Darius Garland game. I'll tip my cap. My MVP was Donovan Mitchell in this one, just because there's moments.
Save it.
I'll tease it a little bit, but like there were moments in the third quarter that the Cavs kind of came out a little flat, like they have all season long. But like Mitchell tapped into his offensive repertoire and his capabilities to really shoulder that load where you kind of expect him to, and you're starting to find maybe a little bit more of that harmony where Garland can be the thunder, Mitchell can be Garland can be the lightning, rather, this playmaking and also scoring acumen, but Mitchell can be the thunder where he can just kind of keep giving you pressure for the Cavs. And there is a recipe for success in that. I'm just interested to see what the next mutation is of it.
I'll explain what this is going to be later in the show. What we're going to have on the Thursday episode that won't give us a chance to talk about the rematch of this. But Evan, give me one thing you're looking forward to in round 2 of this when we get that on Thursday.
Well, it depends whether or not Evan Mobley is available. I'm just going to say I doubt he is after missing the first 3 games on this trip. I would assume he's just 4 for 4 on this one, and you evaluate when you're back home and see how he is against Atlanta. But regardless, do we see more of what we saw from Allen, where like he's comfortable defending in space against Porzingis, or even like sometimes having to defend Tatum? Like I think that recovery block he had against Tatum was like one of the biggest plays of the game for Cleveland, and Allen really stepped up and showed out in this game. Where you and I kind of had our like doubts, like, oh, he's gonna get overwhelmed. So can he replicate that performance? And again, like there are small mistakes, and I'll kind of dive more into those in the third segment when we empty the notebook, but there are small things the Cavs could clean up to win this game and maybe the next one, but that's kind of what I'm going to kind of earmark a little bit when looking ahead to what Thursday's game holds. What about you?
All right. I am looking to... We'll talk about him in segment 3 too. What does Caris LeVert look like? I thought he left me, I think, wanting in this game if there's one person that was. And let's see what the offensive aggression looks like. This is a tease for me for segment 2. The way the Cavs played in this game was different than they normally do. And was that they got caught up in the flow of this game? Or was this a game plan? Like there's something here in what happened that I am intrigued by, let's say, about what it meant and if it means anything bigger than just a one-off. But if you just look at the way they shot and where they shot, it tells a story about what the offense like. This is not the kind of structure of the game for Cleveland that I was expecting, and how it got there to me is that in itself will merit kind of looking back at this game. It's one of those games where you look at those numbers and you'd love to have been in Boston and be like, hey, JB, what's the thought process about, did this happen on purpose? But we'll talk about that stat, what that means, and give out our game award. That's MVP, that's stat of the night, and that's play of the night up after this. Today's episode is brought to you by our friends at eBay Motors. And right now, eBay Motors is bringing you a team up with Locked On Fantasy Basketball host Josh Lloyd to bring you some of the best fantasy picks each week all season long. Whether you're prepping for a daily draft or scouting the waiver wire, every week we're going to provide you with players who are guaranteed to fit on your roster. So let's see who Josh has picked out for us on this week's eBay's Guaranteed Fit Fantasy Pick of the Weeks. One name he has on his list that I really like is Isaiah Hartenstein, the former Cleveland Cavalier who slightly slept on, I would say, in Hartenstein's career is that his passing skills, that part of his game, I think, started to pop for the first time in Cleveland. And Josh writes, with Mitchell Robinson on 8 to 10 weeks, Hartenstein is the guy I look to even though Jericho Sims is starting. Hartenstein closed the game on Monday. So take a look at Hartenstein. Josh Lloyd from Locked On Fantasy Basketball is going to help you win your fantasy championship, and eBay Motors knows a championship team is about each player being a perfect fit. That is the same with your vehicle. For me, that's my Ford Bronco. I love my car. It is the car I'm going to drive for as long as I can, and eBay Motors is going to help me do it. I have all my parts that I could need in the future picked out in there. I have the accessories I might want to get myself as a little Christmas gift saved in there as well. And with over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you can make sure your ride stays running smoothly. They have brake kits, LED headlights, roof racks, bumpers, whatever your baby needs, eBay Motors has it. And with eBay's Guaranteed Fit, it's guaranteed to fit your ride the first time, every time, or your money back. Plus, at these prices, you're burning rubber, not cash. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. Eligible items only, exclusions apply, and check out Locked On Fantasy Basketball for more insight from the great Josh Lloyd. All right, if you're tuning in for the first time today, here are our game awards. It's going to be MVP, it's going to be stat of the night, and play of the night. We do these after every game, win or lose. Sometimes we put the awards in air quotes because when they do things like lose to the Portland Trail Blazers, it's not quite awards. Evan, who's your MVP?
My MVP in this game, like I said in the first segment, is Donovan Mitchell. What really crystallized the performance for me in this game is not just the fact that he was Cleveland's leading scorer and overall the leading scorer for both teams, but more so the fact that, like, in the third quarter when the Cavs came out flat like they did, or have rather, in most games, like, Mitchell started to heat up. He started to find shots. I think he didn't press, which is the most important thing. Like, he worked within the flow of the offense. A lot of it was pick and roll heavy stuff, but Mitchell played really well in this game. And you talked about maybe wanting more from Caris LeVert, but like, this is a game where I'm like, yeah, I wanted more from Donovan Mitchell for a little while now. And this is a game where he didn't press. He played within the flow of the offense, and he gave the Cavs a little bit more juice than maybe what he was giving them up to this point this season.
I go with Jared Allen. So Jared Allen, I think, had not the most robust, overwhelming box score, right? Like, you're not going to look at this and be like, man, that was a monster Jared Allen. He had 14 and 5, and he fouled 4 times. He only had 2 blocks. He had 3 steals, 6 of 9 from the field, 2 of 5 from the line. Missed some free throws. That certainly wasn't great. But Evan, I thought the way he played defensively in this game and some of the shots he made out of the short roll, hitting little floaters, hitting little jumpers, it's about as good as you've seen Jared as a two-way player in some spurts this season. And I thought he was so active in contesting shots to the rim and being there and was really up for as best he could, and he kind of couldn't do it all. And he definitely just could not do this all on his own. This is one of the spots you really miss Mobley, and we'll get to that more on that. But he was very good at being in spots where he had to be, considering the way the Cavs were playing in this game and how small they skewed at times, and the way Boston was really particularly picking at them with different looks. So I go Jared Allen. I just thought a very good Jared game, even if it's not the most overwhelming.
I think that's a good shout. He played really well in this game. Again, like, had to deal with a stretchier big man in Kristaps Porzingis. You also had to deal with Jason Tatum, who's like a bigger wing that is a 4 on the floor for Boston, but is like a 1, 2, 3, 4 type player that Allen, wasn't perfect against, but like defended pretty well. And in one of those defensive sequences against Tatum, which is my play of the night, is I believe it was like maybe 4-ish minutes in the second or third quarter. Allen was like towards the top of the paint or the top of the key, was watching the play unfold, recovered because Strus got blown past by Tatum, and Allen had a very athletic, high energy block that one wasn't a foul, which, superstars usually get fouls, or in superstars in Tatum's case, usually get foul calls on plays like that. And more importantly, the Cavs were able to corral it inbounds and run down the floor and kind of get an easy bucket on the other end of the court. So, yeah, Allen was pretty big in this game, like both figuratively and literally, and really stepped up to the task despite not having Evan Mobley out there with him.
Let's go to play of the night. What is yours?
It just like I said, like it was one of those spark note moments where you thought going into this game, Allen was going to get picked apart, especially after fouling out the night before against Orlando. And, the general onus on Jared Allen, at least externally, probably not internally, is a little more bleh than some people want to lean on. A lot of people were saying like, oh, they need to move him and build around Mobley, Garland, and Mitchell and maximize that, which, yeah, that is a path for how to flesh this out long term. But like in the now, like he really stepped up to the task, especially because this was a game where Evan Mobley was certainly missed, maybe whether it was second chance opportunities or just overall defense against Tatum or Brown or Porzingis. And like Allen just stepped up and played pretty well in his role. Like you said, it wasn't like the flashiest or even the sexiest numbers counting wise, like 14, 5 and 5 and 2 with 4 fouls isn't like super robust, but like he did step up to the task, and it kind of crystallized for me because one, he shows a little bit more of that burst after dealing with the injury during the preseason, kind of ramping back up his production, and just looked sharp in that block on Tatum.
I think that was my play as well. That block from him was great. I'm going to throw out two other ones. One which is a Cavs one which is Drew Holiday denying Donovan Mitchell. The first one, the Mitchell pass. He has a pass in the first half where he spun in and out over Drew Holiday and then whipped back, and then he pulled the ball back the other way and whipped it to Dean Wade in the corner. Mitchell's body control is just outrageous. I think that might be his number one strength as a player, is his ability to plant and throw passes and attack angles with his strength and his athleticism. This pass is just straight core strength. It's not vision so much as it is he's on one foot and he pulls the ball out all the way to his right and whips it to the corner at full speed, and it's perfect. It's just, he's the only one on the team that can make that pass. The other one is for the first time tonight. Evan, you know that up and under move that Mitchell loves where he whips the ball kind of over and it uses it to get by guys? Drew Holiday, I think, is the first player I have ever seen know how to defend that and poke the ball and cause a turnover out of it. I was kind of dumbfounded by the fact that Drew did that in this game.
Yeah, one of the best defensive guards in the league, Drew Holiday, like even though he's 33 years old and maybe wasn't the primary or permanent solution for Milwaukee long term, but like still cooking out there. And like even if the scoring isn't there for him quite as much as it was at one point in his career, like that was kind of my fear heading into this matchup, was just like, okay, how do Tatum and Holiday, or sorry, not Tatum, I mean Tatum too, Tatum, Holiday, and Brown all defend Garland and Mitchell. And there were moments the two for Cleveland were able to break down some of the defensive threats Boston threw at them, but then there's also moments where like Drew Holiday just has like that level to him where like he can kind of read and react to things that, like you said, nobody else really is capable of.
Couple really quick stats to get out of this segment. For me, it's that the Cavs and the Celtics were pretty even as far as the percentage of their shots from three. 46% of the Cavs shots were from three versus 48% for Boston. Both teams, the Cavs finished with 45 threes, the Celtics with 44. Boston comes in at a pretty high clip of threes, I believe, first in the league in terms of 3-point rate among teams. Yeah, they came in at 44.6% of their shots from three. Cleveland, by comparison, 34.6%. So for whatever reason, the Cavs just took a bunch of threes in this game. Again, that's so out of character for them but it worked. Like the offense was good and it fit the personnel. Maybe it's probably just a one-off. That would be my guess. But really interesting to see the Cavs just go toe-to-toe in terms of 3-point rate with the team that takes the most threes by percentage of their shots in the entire league. And instead of being at about average from terms of 3-point rate, a little below league average in terms of that kind of rate, they're well above league average. What's your stat?
My stat of the night is, as I double-check my numbers, my math, Mitchell and Garland scored a pass to combine for 70.8% of Cleveland's total points in this game. And it didn't feel like, again, your turn, my turn basketball. It felt like they were kind of playing in harmony with the flow of the offense. Like you said, Mitchell's body control was outstanding, as it always has been. I think Garland just being a little bit more focused on being mindful with his possessions. I think the 2 turnovers to 7 assists is a great shot by you in the first segment. Like, overall, like a really good game between these two, and kind of really does set that foundation of like, okay, what are the next steps now that they are both healthy, and at least in Mitchell's case, starts to have that burst back again that maybe he was missing while recovering from the hamstring injury. And now that they're both kind of feeling themselves a little bit, and despite the loss, like what can they build upon from this to kind of get better and just really maximize Cleveland's chances every night?
All right, up after this, how do the Cavs miss Evan Mobley, and how did Caris LeVert look in his return? That's coming up after this. Today's episode is also brought to you by our friends at Gametime. You should not have to worry about anything, any stress, any anxiety about getting the best deal when you're buying tickets to your next big event. Gametime is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater events near you, with killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their best price guarantee. Gametime takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. The last-minute deals on Gametime are great. I use them in New York this summer. I'm going to use them when I go back to New York in March. You can use them here in Cleveland if you're here and you want Cavs tickets. Gametime's a great way to do it. And the Gametime guarantee means you'll always get the best price. If you find tickets in the same section or row for less, Gametime will credit you 110% of the difference. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Again, create an account, redeem our code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Terms apply. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, and that is guaranteed. Let's start with Caris with LeVert.
Mm-hmm.
He was kind of blah to me. I understand why he's one of the 5 that you're closing with. And there's going to be moments where you need him and need what he does. But this is also, to me, Evan, one of those moments where he comes back and it's good to get the body back. And I don't want to take away from that. But I also find that what he is does feel a little bit too overlapped with Garland and Mitchell. And I don't know if it's Niang. This wasn't a great Okoro game, particularly in offense, where he's just looked very unsettled. But LeVert was just, it didn't feel, he didn't just fit exactly seamlessly in his first game back from injury.
He definitely did look like a guy who was coming back after missing quite a few games with a knee injury or just an injury in general. And like, yeah, he had 11 points, 3 assists, 2 rebounds, but like they were kind of empty, like you're alluding to. Like it just didn't feel like he meshed very well with Garland and Mitchell. And ideally, you're like closing with that smaller lineup of Garland, Mitchell, LeVert, Max Strus, and Jared Allen, or Evan Mobley, depending on whatever JB Bickerstaff's comfortable with that night. But this is just an instance of like he probably needs to play himself back into, game ready shape. And there was just a lot of bumps and bruises and maybe just like some kind of unevenness when it came to his performance tonight. I mean, there definitely was, and it ditto for Okoro. I think Niang certainly didn't give you much. He only had 1 shot, which was a 3-point attempt, which he connected on. But then other than that, he had 2 rebounds, 1 assist, 1 foul, and a turnover. Like, wasn't giving you much on the floor because he was the second biggest culprit in plus minus with minus 14 on the floor. So yeah, I think it's just going to be a bit of an adjustment. This lineup with LeVert, Mitchell, and Garland struggled at times last season. I think there's ways for Bickerstaff to get LeVert rolling a little bit, so it's a little bit easier and less bumpy of a ride down the stretch when you run that smaller lineup and you kind of see the results you get when that lineup is clicking. But yeah, like this is a game where, as you said, it left more to be desired, and I don't expect this to be like the long-term forecast for LeVert's production, but certainly was a bit of a sour note considering how well LeVert plays against Boston in the Garden and during his career.
All right, let's go on Evan Mobley. I think there's no better way to encapsulate, Evan, what they missed by not having Evan Mobley in this game. By being in a world where when the Cavs needed a different body to defend Jason Tatum, they used Tristan Thompson. And
it was a calculation, but boy, the math was not good.
Yeah, it's like I get why they try it. And I think overall in this game, you felt missing Mobley in just eating up space. And I think in the pick and roll, you saw Boston, particularly late, really hammer Dean Wade, really hammer Max Strus in those spots where they just said, we're bigger than you in this action. We're just going to go at you and get a good look out of it. And that process won out because it was the right calculus. That was the right calculus. But you missed Mobley to help defer some of those actions. You missed him as an option to defend Tatum or Brown if you wanted later in this game. As much as Evan, I think fair wondering what exactly is an offense, what the best fit is for him defensively. He is both the floor. I think he both raises the ceiling and raises the floor of what this team is defensively. And this is the kind of game against an elite offensive team that had the size advantage against you in spots that, he's not going to solve Derek White hitting a bunch of threes and all of that, but he's going to help you defend those pick and rolls. He's going to help you eat up space. He's going to give Jared Allen support on the inside, even if he's just in help. And frankly, I think for us, I would have liked to have seen him defend Jason Tatum in this game. I would have liked to have seen what that looked like to get a feel for where he's at as being the guy defending a lead predator.
Yeah, I think that's a great shout just because I believe Serena Winters pointed this out the last time the Cavs were at home, but Mobley is once again one of the best isolation or just one-on-one defenders in the league. For about the second year in the row, he wasn't the number one at the end of last season, but he was a top 5 player in that category. But yeah, this is a game where his value is understated, and you also hit the nail on the head where he does raise the ceiling overall just because he is such an otherworldly defender, but also just raises the floor as well just because he is so rock solid defensively in what he provides you. And I think that's the beauty of the Allen and Mobley tandem is Allen is very comfortable. Not very comfortable, but he's comfortable at least defending the paint, or at least having to defending in space if you ask him to. I think he played very well against Porzingis in this game, but his primary role and his biggest strength is defending the paint, and that kind of empowers Mobley to defend guys like Jason Tatum, or maybe even defend Jaylen Brown and shoot. Maybe he would have defended Derek White a few possessions on the perimeter as well, but. Yeah, I think this game would have been different. I don't know if the outcome would have been different if Mobley played, but it certainly would have felt different scoring wise for Boston if the Cavs did have their best overall defender out there.
Let's end there. I'm Chris Manning. That's Evan Dammarell. I'll be back at you on Thursday. We have a special guest coming through. It's going to be a little differentiation. We're going to talk. I'm talking with Vince Gieri, who writes for Cleveland Magazine. He did a really cool story recently about the Cleveland Rockers. And considering there's just a little break in the schedule, I want to talk to Vince about this story. It's a cool story. It involves LeBron. It involves the Guns. It involves Dan Gilbert. It involves the future of basketball in the city. So we're going to talk to Vince about that. And then Friday, Evan will be back. We're going to do a Cavs Celtics recap. So tomorrow, little WNBA, little basketball in Cleveland history for you. Something I think you'll really enjoy. And then Friday, we'll recap Cavs Celtics round 2, where Evan, I suspect the Cavs probably won't be an 11.5 point underdogs, maybe 6.5.
No, maybe even lower because to be frank, I thought they were going to get steamrolled in this game just because of how good Boston was. The Cavs showed up.
People could go to the show yesterday. We're I don't know. They're going to probably get smoked. And then they didn't. So credit to them at the very least for the fact that they didn't get their butts handed to them for this one.
Yeah. So, yeah, maybe less than 6.5, but no less than 3.5 point dogs. It all depends on Evan Mobley, of course, but the Cavs did play pretty well, all things considered. Again, glass half full, despite a loss. It can get annoying to hear, but this wasn't an overall doom and gloom loss for Cleveland. So shouldn't completely count them out on Thursday.
Talk to y'all tomorrow and Friday. Thanks again to Jake Stevens as always. And thanks for listening to this episode of Locked On Cavs for Wednesday, December